So, as you might have heard last night, uh, we lost a legendary horror director last night. 76 years old, Wes Craven passed away due to complications from brain cancer he had for a couple years. And I want to take the time to express how much gratitude he's had on me as a person. Um, Wes Craven, I will always remember the time when my father put in the first Nightmare on Elm Street when I was 6 years old, and the director really horrified me and kept me away from that franchise until I was in high school. I was just so afraid of the character and what he could do that, and that's an effective director. Wes Craven will always be remembered as a really legendary horror director. In many cases, he brought things to a genre that during its time was getting stale with stabbings, just stabbings, with Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees, and Wes Craven really shook it up. His character Freddy Krueger is always going to be a popular character. You can't go 20 feet outside of your house and not mention Freddy Krueger in like a horror movie conversation or any movie conversation, really. This is the same guy who brought us The Hills of Eyes, The Last House on the Left, uh, Swamp Thing, if you guys know what Swamp Thing is, Shocker, and more recently the Scream movies, and he he was always this director. Every horror director has its own certain mark, but this one, but Wes was a most certainly a a more grander type of director. He used a lot of practical effects. Not probably not as much as George Romero did with his Living Dead series, but nonetheless, he still had a very very good vision of what he wanted to do with his movies. And, you know, I'm going to take a look now and see and do a rough review on the three Nightmare on Elm Street films he was a part of. Uh, he either had to direct it or act in it. And so, my thoughts on the first Nightmare on Elm Street film, as I just told you before, it scared the crap out of me when I was 6 years old. Um, and it's still a scary subject, dying in your sleep. And he brought it into a fantastically rendered sort of reality. What could happen? Is there a being that could go into dreams and kill people? It's a wonderfully fantastic vision that I don't think anyone before it had ever dreamed of or ever had a nightmare of. Haha, nightmare of. And then we get to Nightmare on Elm Street 3. Now, this is a kind of a special case. Since Nightmare on Elm Street 2 didn't do so well at the box office and was critically repealed as, one of the worst Nightmare on Elm Streets to date at that point, before shit hit the fan. But Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors saw the return of the hero Heather Langenkamp, and also Robert Englund. Robert Englund did 8 movies for the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, and he never regretted a day. I think, at least that's what is written in his autobiography as. But Nightmare on Elm Street 3 combined the best elements of horror and comedy. There's a little comedy, but it's also pretty dark. And this is Nightmare on Elm Street 3 is the quintessential nightmare film, in my opinion. And then we get to his last nightmare film that he did, and that was Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Now, this is also a special one, because concerning that between the films 3 through 6, it progressively got worse. You know, there was more emphasis on the comedy, there was more emphasis on making it stupid and weird. You know, and the last straw was Freddy's Dead, and I absolutely hate that film so much. Uh, but it wasn't until New Nightmare that New Nightmare was a special breed. It wasn't. It wasn't a true nightmare film because it wasn't set in its fictional world. It was set in the real world, and it had this concept of the movies blending in with reality. And it had this sort of Matrix vibe. Where this world is not the world that you think it is. And it was way before its time, and with that, it had bad reviews, and it didn't do well at the box office. It really didn't. But it's still an underrated nightmare film for me because it's such a cool concept of the things that we fictionalize coming into our real world, you know, and affecting us emotionally and physically. And that's what Heather Langenkamp did in that movie, and that's what Wes Craven did. He starred in that movie. He directed it. He wrote it. You know, and he'll always be remembered for two things. One was Ghostface, and the other was Freddy Krueger. And he poured his heart into every frame that he ever directed. I felt, at least, when I watched his movies. And to the family of Mr. Craven, I give you my condolences. My thoughts are with you at this point. And to Wes Craven, wherever he may be, I want to say thank you so much for the constant creativity you bring to the screen, for the characters that you have developed over the years, for your movies, and for just being a great director. I mean, without you, we wouldn't have so many. We wouldn't have good horror films, and you were one of the forerunners, other than John Carpenter and oh shoot, what was the other one? Toby Hooper and George Romero. You wouldn't have been as influential as you are now, and you've certainly inspired a lot of people. You've inspired a new generation of horror filmmakers and filmmakers in general. So, with a tip of the hat, we salute you here at Spirit Mag Clan, Mr. Craven. And we will always remember you as being a really great director, a really great guy, and the person that made fun of the horror genre in Scream. So, what are your memories, guys, of Mr. Craven? Put your comments down below. And as always, peace out, Cub Scouts.